The project originated from producer Jayne Chard, who developed the script with Jordan, and she brought the film to Judd, who brought it to me, and that's how we all sort of became this UK-Australian family. I was looking for the next film to direct, and I thought at surface level it wasn't really what I'd been looking for, but then when I read it, I thought it was really smart. I saw something in it that I really liked, which was this sort of deep conversation about immigration, using cannibals and immigrants as a really great metaphor for what's happening in our country. And it wasn't just another Aussie outback comedy. It's a film about Australians, but it's not an Australian film, it's a British film. And it's about how they might view us as these quirky outsiders. There is kind of a scary movement towards nationalism globally, not just in Australia, not just in the UK, but everywhere. It's all getting very serious, but this is a different way into that conversation, I think. It's a spotlight that allows people to talk about it in a different way. Jordan, I loved working with, absolutely. He was great as a writer and as a lead actor and as a collaborator. From the get-go, it was a great working relationship. We both knew the film we were making. He was very collaborative, even though he'd only visited Australia once in his younger years. But still, he really got what Aussie culture is about, and I gave him a few specific things, but it was really great to be on the same page. Kathryn was a diamond in the rough. Like, it was really hard to find who Annabelle was going to be because we already had Jordan. So we needed to find someone that matched him as not only his sister, but his twin sister. And we pretty much decided we're never gonna find someone who looks like him. And not only did she look like him, similar height, similar hair color, but she was just this amazing actor who brought so much integrity to every frame that she was in. We're really blessed to have this cast that we have. It's an indie film, so you can't always have the biggest cast, but I aimed to find a lot of Aussie people that we know here on our screens and, you know, fill it with familiar names and faces. Kerry Armstrong was one of the first people to sign on, and we were very, very lucky to have her, but she was really enthusiastic about the role because she doesn't often play characters like this. We met and we talked about the project and she seemed really gung-ho about being involved. But I was surprised and I thought, who do you want to play? And she said, Mary. And I'm like, oh, but Mary's meant to be quite old and Kerry isn't. But she wanted the makeup, she wanted the wig and the wrinkles and the long white hair and the gold tooth. That was all part of her disappearing into the role. I don't know if anyone's ever seen Gary Sweet with a German accent before. And that was his idea. The character was named Hans, but because of that he thought, why don't I do German? And I did say initially, well, he's from the outback. I don't know if that would work. Which is why we put in a line about his one summer in Dusseldorf.
That accent's not the only thing you brought back from your one summer in Dusseldorf.
Greg Fryer is one of my favourite people on set. He was so grateful to be there. He actually grew up in the area in Krakow where we filmed, and he was returning home in a way, and he actually gave us this really beautiful welcome to country when the crew arrived, and we all felt like we were there with a special purpose to make a very unique and very special movie. Sam Balch was the DP, and he and I have always worked together since we were kids wanting to break into films. So we have a language that's very quick with each other. Pretty much everything he wants to do, I've already thought of it, or everything I suggest he's already thought of, and we're very much on the same page. And his whole philosophy behind the look of the film was to make it gritty, make it more old-fashioned. We did think if we were making this film in the 70s, we would have had a lot more limitations than a lot of people have now making films. So we just decided to lean into that because we love the look of those films. They're darker, grainier, a bit grittier. We used vintage lenses to give it a bit of a glossy look. And I think with this genre, you're able to play with the camera a little more, you know, do quick push-ins and big movements and be a little more zany with it. So that was something that we thought was a great opportunity to explore here. We found Joe Tiernan as our production designer. It was a big challenge for him because it was a very quick pre-production period. It ended up just a phenomenal success. They just put every ounce of effort that they had into putting detail into the backgrounds and making this feel like a really lived-in place. A lot of it was already there because Krakow is a very broken down town with a lot of facades that have been there for 30 years. So we were not only adding to that, but then building interiors in those structures, filling those interiors up with a lot more detail that wasn't there. So it was a good mix of creative thinking and just happy accidents with what Krakow already had. The fight sequence was a huge challenge. It was 4 nights of filming from dusk till dawn with a stunt team, with cable rigs, with all kinds of blood, prosthetics, just lots of different elements that we had to film out of order for different, cast scheduling reasons. And it became very much a puzzle and everybody started to feel like pieces in that puzzle. And for me and the first AD, Darcy, we had to basically just try and step back and look at that puzzle and figure out how to do it segmentedly. And to keep that flow in your mind is definitely a skill you have to learn by doing it, because you have to have a picture of the edit. Otherwise you would just let it all go and things would fall apart. If you forget where that piece was meant to connect with that piece, it'd become very difficult. And it was difficult, but everyone knuckled down, and John Walton, our stunt coordinator, was very, very good with having a very solid vision for that fight sequence. I definitely loved the script as I was reading. I was really enjoying it. I thought this was really cool, but the moment I fully embraced it and fully got excited about it was the musical number. It was originally called The Cannibal Disco because it was going to be a 70s, disco theme, and we turned it into a sort of rock and roll karaoke sequence. Helen Dallimore is absolutely a standout in that scene singing Skyhook's horror movie. I think it's better than the original. We decided that it needed to be theatrical and drive and build and have layers. So Ryan Stevens, our composer, took that original song and turned it into a rock opera. And we just threw everything at that scene. We storyboarded the whole thing. Every frame of the whole movie was storyboarded, but the storyboards for this sequence were particularly fun. We had shot glasses filled with blood falling into pints of beer that we called blood shots. We had a bunch of crazy extras, some of whom drove 12 hours to get there multiple times just to be part of the experience. The movie is quite tame up until that point, and it's mysterious and spooky and you're wondering where it's going, and then all of a sudden it just explodes and goes really haywire. It's interesting how much a film changes from the script to the shoot to the edit. The edit process is integral to finding that tone, and it's a very, very delicate balance, whether you want to go a little bit more horror or a little more comedy. Horror comedy has to have that balance, and that was a big part of what Digby Hogan brought as an editor, was that sort of sensibility and trusting me when I had a thought, and I trusted him when he had a thought. We were very much on the same page. For me, it's really exciting to see the movie come together in post, especially the visual effects. I have a mild visual effects background, so a lot of the things were conceptualized quite early, but handing off to another team and seeing them chip away at each effect shot one by one is really exciting, because it starts to feel real. So there's things like the cockroach coming out of the piano and scurrying away, and then because I love that cockroach, I wanted to put that on the wall just to lead the audience's eye towards the place on screen where Annabelle pops out. I wanted to use that cockroach as a sort of visual direction tool. But for the most part, it's not a purely visual effects heavy film. There are lots of effect shots, but a lot of them are just sort of sky replacements and simple things, because we still want to keep it grounded and make it feel like a real, classical, old-fashioned film. A small group of us went to the UK to film the opening scenes, which were set in Slough but filmed in Bristol. And we had just come out of the Australian summer straight into UK winter, so it was a huge sort of climate shock and a bit of a cultural shock too, but the UK crew was great, and they're just these seasoned professionals who joined our crew almost as if they were doing a little short film, because it was only 4 days for them, but we were at the end of this long, hugely sort of enriching experience. And by the end of it, we were exhausted, but we had a film. It's a very oddball piece that we've made that exists in this part of Australia that doesn't really exist, but it takes its cues from tropes of Australian culture and then forms this really crazy little ball of weirdness and oddness that may seem strange and silly on the surface and hilariously off the wall, but it really does have that heart, that emotional heart about a family coming back together. That's why I thought I could get away with some of the gruesome moments and some of the potty humour, because it did have this layer beneath it that was always about Norman and Annabelle finding their mother and about that family reuniting. You have to take your theme seriously, and when you do that, you can get away with those other more outlandish elements. So that was a big mission for us, and I think as a result we have something that's really hilarious, at times shocking, but overall quite touching.